Good day, guys, Austin here, and in this one today, we're taking a look at one of my favourite franchises of all times. Yep, we're playing Pilotwings today, a game that I've loved since the Super Nintendo to the Wii, and now, to be honest, I love it on the 3DS, although I'm not really a 3DS player. I love most of the games on that system, but I'm just not a mobile gamer, so although I own it and love it, I just don't play it enough. So being able to play this now on my big screen, absolutely beautiful. So like I said, we're emulating this and we're using this with the Citra Emulator. It's the most recent official build that I've managed to get, officially downloaded from the website. I'll put links in the description down below, and we're going to test how well this puppy's playing. I'm utilizing my Xbox One S pad, and that's enough waffles for now. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Okay, so in the past, this has been a troublesome game for me, which hasn't been the best of news because, like I said, this is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I've been able to play Pilotwings Resort on my big screen, means that I can, well, play this how I want to play the game, which is on the big screen with my controller. Like I said, I love the 3DS and I love many of the titles, but I just don't get enough gaming out of them to justify me charging it up and taking it anywhere. I mean, I don't even play on my mobile phone, and that's the most accessible mobile gadget I've got. But anyway, enough of that rambles. Let's talk about the actual emulator itself. Again, I'm using a Canary build. I've brought all my stats on the right hand side. I'm running this on a complete overkill PC. Specs in the description down below. But trust me guys, if you've got an i3, I've teamed this with an i3 with a 560 in the past, 8 gigs of RAM. I got this 1080p on even the most demanding games. But this one, for me, is a troublesome game in the past. I got about 5 frames per second on this. And it got even worse the more I played it. So, being able to see this now being rendered full time, oh, beautiful. So the point to note, these are the frames per second here. It is a 60 frame per second game, so at least I think it is. Let's minimize this, let's make sure first. F7. Yeah, as you can see, game speed 100%, and it is running 60 frames per second. So the frame rate is true to the actual game speed anyway, because Citra runs all games at 60 frames per second. But those 30 frames per second games, obviously it's not rendering each one of those frames to make it an actual true 60 frames per second game. Unless in this case, you have got one that is true 60 frames per second, in which case all frames will be rendered. Anyway, enough of those rambles again. Let's actually get into the game and see how well it is performing. So, click A. I've got no idea what actual settings I've got on. We'll go into the actual game and let's test it out. So let's quickly make a new profile because I've got no idea what setup I had previously. I don't care what I look like. Sign my name on the dotted line. No copying this either way, by the way, guys. Cashing checks for me or something. Okay, so far so good. Right then, so let's go for a rumble. I've gone onto the test stage, and this should now get itself set up and running. Frame rate wise, I've just seen a huge drop. I'm now getting 46 frames per second. Oh, that's not good. Not good at all. That's not good in any kind of way. So let's take a quick cruise around, see if we can get any kind of speed up. There may be stutters from time to time. That's basically because it's the first time I've loaded it up on this build. So there will be shader caching issues. That's not so much with the performance of the game on the emulator. It's just the fact that it's the first time I've played it. So it's kind of like the game writing itself onto the emulator. Does that make sense? I don't know. But I'm sure you get what I'm talking about. So now my frame rate has gone back up. I'm now at 40. There we go. It seems that this town is a troublesome town for this emulator. So let's change a few settings. Let's go into emulation, configure, graphics. I'm running this at 4K. That could be the issue. So now I'm going to turn off accurate hardware shader. For me, I don't think this game will require it, but we may have to play with this later on. Let's drop it down to 1080p. I mean, to be honest, with my system, most games if not all the most compatible games, will run no problem whatsoever 4K. Even if you've got a relatively mid-range to low-end, in some cases, computer, you'll still be able to get internal resolution on this emulator now with the more usage from the GPU, with the breakthroughs that they made. You'll be able to get 4K, no issues, full speed on most games. But some games are still troublesome, as we talked about with this one. So we've messed around, we've brought it down to 1080p, and to be honest, boom, look at that, 60 frames per second, and still keeping what I would consider pretty good crisp resolution. Right, so let's go on a wonder. No, what's going on here? The frame rate's dropped back down. This is a troublesome game still. So, let's drop it down again. Let's go 720p. Okay, so the visuals are starting to drop now. Obviously, YouTube won't do any justice for the visuals on this anyway, but I can tell you that from going from 1080 to 720p is a huge difference. Still much better than the native resolution of the console, but it's still struggling with that then. So maybe this game... Oh, we are seeing speed ups. Is it going to slow down when I come back into the village? Yeah, that's not stable. Okay, so is it the resolution or is it accurate hardware shader? So let's switch that back on. Let's push it up to 1080 again. Click OK. Continue. So we're still seeing 60 frames per second, which is cool. We've got crisp visuals from the 1080p. Cool. And we're seeing no slowdown in this location now. So there it is. We did need to enable the options. There is a few stutters, but again, that'll be mostly down. Whoa. There we go. We've seen a drop again. Out of interest, let's go and click on emulation, configure, graphics. Out of interest, instead of turning this down, let's turn it up. So it will actually, let's go for 1440. Nice middle ground. So we're still well above 1080. So in theory, in normal calculations, you would think that if anything, the frame rate would drop. But is this something to do with the, I don't know, buffers or cache or something along them lines? Basically, the more you play the game, it kind of fills itself up. Because if you look at the GPU, I'm running, what, 60% maximum, even when I was running at 4K. The CPU, yeah, we're getting into the 60s, but by no means would that tax my system, or in fact, any people's systems, mostly, depending on obviously what you're running. So let's see if actually turning this up and kind of resetting the visuals kind of resets the frame rate. Interesting. Let's see if it does. So we've now got up to 60, obviously, but we're not moving. So let's go into the game again. And I'm running 60. So it is something to do with that then. See, I'm back into the town. And it's a solid frame rate, even though I've gone higher with the resolution. So there we go. That does get interesting. It's a pain in the ass, because I do love playing this game. But it's interesting to show, and it's kind of what I like with the tweaking of emulators to find the best resolutions, the best settings and all that kind of stuff to get the most out of these games. But it looks like this emulator has got an issue with this game. It does play it, and it plays solid frame rate. But after a few minutes of playing the game, it kind of loads itself out. So at this moment, let's pause. I'm getting up to 70% on one CPU core. I'm also getting GPU usage under 50%. Memory usage on my GPU's not changed. Memory usage on my system's not changed. Yet, this system has... I don't know. It's like the emulator isn't catching up with the game. Does that make sense? So it kind of... It plays so much, it confuses itself, and what you have to do is go into... I'm going to see if it proves the point yet again. I'm going to configure. I'm going to graphics. I'm now going to push it even further to, well, 4K resolution. See if it resets itself. Again, one of my cores is going quite high. Usage on the other cores is quite reasonable. And to be honest, I think this emulator uses, what, 2, maybe 3 cores? So most of this will be from actual system usage with the back end, with Windows and programs running in the background. I haven't got anything open right now, nothing substantial anyway. But yeah, let's see how this impacts. Turning up the resolution again. Am I going to get a solid 60? It's gone back up to it so far. Let's get into the game. And there you go. 60 frames per second, the exact same location. And then it drops. So it's like something gets full, whether it be the shader cache, the way that it's dealing with the artifacts on the screen, the rendering or whatever. It just doesn't like to play ball. So is this game playable? Yeah, it is playable. But from time to time you are going to get huge slowdowns. Like that. It's like after a few minutes of playing, it just brings itself to its knees. It's like it overloads itself and can't cope with the amount of information that probably is already processed. Maybe it needs to dump itself somewhere. I don't know. But hopefully that has brought some enlightenment to you guys. I was praying that this game would work, but unfortunately, not as of yet. What I'm going to do now is, just for the sake of it, emulation, configure. I'm going to put this on native resolution. It looked terrible. But you may get more game time out of it before that happens. Does that make sense? Maybe it processing lesser information will allow it to play longer at a constant frame rate. But I think we've more or less covered how well this is running, to be honest, guys. That looks terrible as well, doesn't it? Native resolution of a 3DS on the big screen looks horrible. On a tiny screen, this is, you know, very much bearable. But when you blow this onto the big screen... No, unplayable. So, yeah, hopefully we've addressed that today, guys. It may have been of some interest for you guys, and, well, look forward. This weekend, I've got a bumper video coming. I do like to make these, you know, tests available to you so you can see some kind of progress of how things are going, and it allows me to share some information of some of these more problematic games and how the development's going. It's not going to become my full-time content, but it is probably a nice filler for you guys in the meantime while I'm working on my bigger projects. Hopefully over this weekend, one of my bigger projects that will be released will be my budget build PC, which will be a $200 PC, which will play this perfectly, well, the more compatible games, and play, well, you'll see anyway, but it's going to be a good one. So, thanks very much for joining me. Please like, please subscribe, please do all the things that you would do in this magical world where Pilotwings runs for a little bit longer on a lower resolution. But most of all, you guys have a good day. Laters!